Exactly 1 month ago, Apple released the iPhone 17 lineup to the public. The 17 Pro Max has been my daily driver since launch. The hype around the new design and camera has died down, and the real question is, what's it actually like to live with? We'll start with the design. This is by far the biggest visual change in almost 8 years. Coming from the iPhone 16 Pro Max, Apple have ditched the glass back and titanium finish in favour of a forged aluminium unibody. Although the aluminium finish definitely does feel a little bit cheaper than the titanium finish, it still feels incredibly solid. Considering the fact the new iPhone is using aluminium as opposed to titanium, it's definitely more prone to scratches and scuffs. However, after careful use with both the case and screen protector, my iPhone 17 Pro Max looks almost brand new. The 6.9-inch display on the iPhone 17 Pro Max is now blindingly bright at 3000 nits compared with last year's 2000 nits on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. As a result, you're not going to have any issue seeing this display outdoors, even in direct sunlight. Both the front and back of the new iPhones get ceramic shield too. This is a significant upgrade in terms of durability and scratch resistance. Apple claims that the new Ceramic Shield 2 is up to 4 times more crack resistant than the previous iPhone 16 models. However, there's no getting around the fact that the aluminium finish is significantly weaker than the titanium finish on previous models. Over an extended period of time, say 6 months to a year, scratches and scuffs feel basically inevitable on this year's Pro models. Now here's where it gets interesting. For the first time ever, Apple have put a laser welded vapor chamber inside this thing, which means that if you're doing super intensive tasks like videography, editing, or gaming for a prolonged period of time, you can do so and the phone will stay completely cool to the touch. In fact, the whole reason Apple had to ditch the titanium and revert back to the aluminium is because aluminium handles heat much better than titanium does. An added benefit of the new cooling system is that it reduces thermal stress on the batteries, thus extending their lifespan and improving their overall performance. Speaking of batteries, I can confidently say the iPhone 17 Pro Max has the best battery life of any iPhone I've ever had. Since purchasing the device, there hasn't been a single day where I've been concerned about battery life at all, basically. And if you happen to be in a region of the world that sells the eSIM-only model of this phone, such as the US or the Middle East, the battery life improvement is even more noticeable. This is because Apple has used the additional space where the SIM card reader previously was to extend the battery even more. Apple claims that you can get a solid 37 hours of video playback time on the new iPhone 17 Pro Max with a physical SIM, and in an eSIM-only region up to 39 hours of playback, which is absolutely insane. Unfortunately, I'm one of the unlucky ones as I bought this phone in the UK. In addition to the bigger battery, we also get 40-watt dynamic fast charging. Whilst not the fastest in the industry, it's definitely an improvement upon the previous models. I'm able to charge this phone from 0 to 100% in just over an hour, so not too shabby. Whilst I'm here, I wanted to discuss iOS 26. Although I know this isn't specific to the iPhone 17 Pro Max, I think there's a few things worth noting. There's a lot to love about iOS 26. However, I've noticed repeatable bugs and glitches throughout the software, even in the latest version of iOS 26. Obviously, it's not the end of the world, and these things can definitely be refined through updates. However, when you're paying up to £2,000 for a phone, you kind of expect things to be perfect right out of the gate. So although I'm currently a little bit disappointed with the software, I do see the potential for it to be absolutely amazing with future updates. When it comes to new iPhones, it's always the biggest features that get all of the attention. However, a lot of people fail to mention the smaller changes that make the overall experience significantly better. Although I'm not the biggest fan of aluminium, one benefit that you do get is that it feels a lot more comfortable in the hand, especially when compared with older iPhones which had stainless steel or titanium. The anti-reflective coating makes both indoor and outdoor use significantly easier. It's one of those features that you don't really appreciate until you compare it with an older iPhone. The microphone quality on both phone calls and recordings is now crystal clear. Not studio quality just yet, but pretty damn close. The always-on display now doesn't just nuke the phone's battery. In fact, on last year's iPhone, I had to literally turn it off because it was draining it that much. I turned on the always-on display since launch for this iPhone, and the battery drain has been virtually non-existent. Another massive improvement has been the speakers. The iPhone 16 Pro speakers were really good. However, the 17 Pro on both video and music has been incredible. Both video and music are just way more enjoyable to listen to on this phone, and again, it's something you wouldn't really notice unless you had an older phone to compare it to. Face ID is now a lot more reliable on the iPhone 17 lineup. This is because it works from wider angles, resulting in a lot less failed unlocks. My iPhone 17 Pro Max unlocks first time almost every time. These are all very small changes and refinements, however, when they're all put together, they really do make the experience a lot more fluid and premium feeling. Okay, let's talk about the cameras, because there are some serious upgrades here. The biggest one being the telephoto lens, which now features 8x optical quality zoom. This is excellent for getting super close to the action without losing virtually any detail. Having that extra reach over the previous 16 Pro Max is an advantage that I do not take for granted. The front camera has also had its first major upgrade in forever. It's an 18 megapixel square sensor, and quite frankly, this might be a bigger upgrade than the back cameras. You can now tap to switch between portrait and landscape without changing the orientation of the phone. For group selfies and FaceTime call, it automatically expands the frame to fit everyone in. It's a small change, but it has a big impact. For video creators, features like ProRes RAW and the ability to shoot both front and back camera footage simultaneously are very welcomed upgrades. And the upgrades don't stop there. The telephoto lens is now 48 megapixels, meaning that all three of the cameras on the back of this phone are 48 megapixels. The upgrade from 12 megapixels to 48 megapixels isn't as significant as you'd think, but it does mean you can get more detail in your shots. So after 1 month with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, here's my final verdict. With the exception of an occasional software glitch here and there, the iPhone 17 lineup finally feels like a tangible upgrade, and not just the same phone repackaged in a different way every single year. That said, if you're upgrading from one of the newer phones like an iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max, the upgrades won't feel as significant. You'll only really notice them in very fringe case scenarios. For example, the flexibility in the camera settings, the phone being cooler when gaming, or maybe the battery life. But if you're upgrading from an older phone like the iPhone 14 or 15, the difference is going to be night and day. I will say though, it's very difficult to justify a £400 price difference between the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro series this year. Apple has really blurred the line between the base and the Pro models. The base model iPhone 17 now comes with 256GB of storage, improved cameras, better battery life, and a 120Hz refresh rate display right out of the box. All features that used to define what a Pro phone truly was. So it's very difficult to justify a £400 price increase from the iPhone 17 to the 17 Pro Max. The only real difference is the design. We've got all this power with the bigger battery, the A19 chip, vapor chamber cooling, and yet there's nothing we can do with it yet. It almost feels as though the hardware is ahead of the software this year. If I had to take a guess, Apple is setting the Pro iPhones up for something bigger. More than likely, something to do with Apple Intelligence that the base model iPhone 17 won't support. Considering how much Apple harped on about Apple Intelligence for the iPhone 16s and how much of a catastrophic failure it was, I can only imagine they're bringing something big to this year's phones. Funnily enough, they barely mentioned Apple Intelligence at all during this year's Apple event. They're probably just being extra cautious to ensure they don't get any more lawsuits, lost market cap, or unsatisfied customers. But as of right now, the gap between the base model iPhone 17 and the Pro model phones this year is virtually non-existent. However, if Apple does successfully deliver on its AI promises within the next year, we might finally see why the Pro iPhones are truly Pro. Until then, thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.